Kia ora, Aotearoa, kia ora Kiwi Indians, salam, namaste, sat sri akal, और किसी भाषा में अगर आप hello कहना चाहते हैं तो कहिएगा. Welcome to a special edition of the Indian Weekenders video series. Instead of doing the Weekenders on Sunday, let's make this a Weekender on Thursday special presentation. On the election front, we look at what the two referendums are about and see what they mean from a very Kiwi Indian voter's perspective. How familiar are you with, number one, the End of Life Choice Act, and number two, the Cannabis Legislation and Control Bill? Basically, I think they're trying to say, let's decriminalize and free up the use of marijuana referendum, with a few asterisks. Let's take a look a little later at how familiar you are with the ins and outs of the referenda, and frankly, is it referenda or referendum? Angrezi is a punny language. Our guests today are going to be Sumita ji and Sunny Kaushal. Sunny is the community leader from the South Asian community group, and Sumita ji doesn't want to be the leader of anything, but she's definitely a voice in the community. Welcome to the show, folks.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, and all the viewers. I wanted to say Kia ora, Namaste, Sat Sri Akal, Assalamu Alaikum, Kem Cho, and wonderful day.
मुझे वनकम याद आ गया गलती से. वनकम भी डाल देते हैं.
Vanakkam, yes.
So, just to set this up in terms of the discussion we want to do, in less than 3 days, New Zealanders will vote on two very polarizing issues in the referendums, right? In fact, with close to 1.5 million voters having already voted, the die is getting cast very fast. Some of the decisions might already be made in some ways. But how much do we really know about the issues at play? How familiar are you folks? Let's just see how familiar are you with the End of Life Choice Act? And the cannabis one we are addressing a little bit later after 4:30. So maybe we just start with that. How familiar are you both folks with it?
I think that's a pretty good numbers if 500,000 have voted, but still a number of them are yet to vote. As this is coming closer, as people still wait for the last minute, and also the swing voters. So it's going to be more interesting next 3 days until we have that results.
Right, but and in terms of the actual act, do either of you get a sense of what the act is about? What is your understanding of it? So we'll start with Sumita ji, perhaps.
I mean, I have got a fair understanding in terms of, coming from the general public rather than being a bureaucrat or a politician. But आम public क्या सोचती है, आम आदमी क्या सोचता है, उस हिसाब से yes, I've got a fair understanding कि long term में इसका हमारी life पे क्या impact होगा. हाँ जी.
Okay, and Sunny ji, आपकी तरफ से कोई खास टिप्पणी एक्ट पर?
टिप्पणी तो ये है कि because both of these issues, when you're talking about cannabis legalization, as well as end of life choice, जिसको आप euthanasia से भी जानते हैं. So both these issues are going to impact tremendously on our communities and our next generations to come. So it's now, the time comes in life, you need to stand up with your conscience. And now is the time before it's too late.
So let's see. I'll revert it back to Sumita ji. Is this a choice you feel we need, or indeed do we want it? What is your perspective on it? And I think you're coming from a very personal perspective on this one, Sumita ji. So it'll be an interesting story to get.
Sure. Ajay ji, I think it's a combination of both need and want. And I am saying this from the bottom of my heart because I saw my own mother going through it.
Right.
She was in the ICU, and this was back in India, not in New Zealand. She was in the ICU on the ventilator for 50 days. And लोग समझते हैं कि जब कोई भी वेंटिलेटर पे है तो उसको कोई होश नहीं है, उसको कुछ नहीं पता उसके साथ क्या हो रहा है. My mother was fully conscious till right at the end, and she knew what was going on. 50 days हो गए थे उनको ICU में, and it was a gradual organ failure.
Right.
And I mean, the blood was just flowing out of her body because her kidneys had failed and the dialysis not was not working. And in fact, all three of I've got two younger sisters. We had to sit down together and convince our dad कि in fact mummy को उससे हटा के we have to put it on a comfort care, and it's time to say goodbye.
I
In
understand.
अभी भी इंडिया में क्योंकि you don't have this right past, I mean this bill passed, but you can do it in, I mean it's like she had to be put, rather than pumping medicines into her जो कुछ भी नहीं कर रही थी, but we put her on comfort care. और you would not believe it अजय जी, जो उनकी condition थी वो हमसे भी देखी नहीं जा रही थी, हमारी
I
अपनी
understand.
माँ थी, but it was unbearable.
And also without it being a part of the discussion in New Zealand, India में और भी problem है, वहाँ पे hospitals love to carry on and not actually let the patient go, because that's just the approach they take.
आप बिलीव नहीं करेंगे, मैं इस बात से अनफॉर्चुनेटली अग्री नहीं करती हूँ, बिकॉज शी वॉज एडमिटेड इन सर गंगाराम हॉस्पिटल इन दिल्ली, और द डॉक्टर्स गेव हर द बेस्ट पॉसिबल केयर, और वो सब कुछ कोशिश कर रहे थे, लेकिन एंड में उन्होंने हमें खुद ही बोला कि वी डोंट थिंक वी कैन डू एनी मोर फॉर हर, और they never tried to extend it even by a single day.
So you're a fortunate one indeed, and it's a horrible situation to have gone through. It's a very horrible situation to have gone through.
Yeah, but we were very fortunate to have two brilliant doctors working for us.
Yes.
All the way through. But I mean, she was highly diabetic, or भी उनकी pre-existing medical conditions थी, which we knew will not, help her in getting better. But अगर ये चीज उनके पास होती, ये right उनके खुद के पास होता, तो she would have opted out for it much sooner than suffering for 50 days.
I understand. And your belief is she was actually able to make that decision herself, because वो उनके होश थे, होश आवाज था.
बिल्कुल, वो हमें इशारों में, या even she could write slightly, and she actually wrote it down for us. कि
So
just let me go.
I think that's a very emotive plea for having this right available in this kind of circumstance. And I think that is probably the thing that has been promoted within the New Zealand milieu as well. Sunny ji, perhaps you have a similar or different point of view. I have no idea. Where do you stand on this kind of a I guess when you don't have a choice but you need it?
Ajay ji, this is a very serious and very sensitive issue. Look, there is always two thoughts of school.
Two schools of thought. Yeah, we're fine.
Two schools of thought. So A is, there are genuine circumstances, as we have just heard.
Yes.
But those circumstances are very rare, very few, right? But when you look at the bigger picture, if this bill is passed, what we believe, this is going to create a lot of problems in the long term, and also this is going to be a lot of elder abuse, right? And also we just had a meeting on this one. I just wanted to give you a little bit of a background. Last week we called our community leaders from different countries, you can say, as we are a group of South Asian community leaders group.
Sure.
And there was unanimous agreement. A resolution was passed. This message to be sent to all the leaders of the political parties and the organizations. So we discuss all these aspects very minutely.
Yes.
But what we found is, first of all, the people like us who come from South Asia, who come from Indian subcontinent. So we come with very strong values. We come with very religious values. We come with that, our cultural values.
थोड़ी संस्कृति और ट्रेडिशन बीच में हमारे साथ चलती रहती है.
Exactly. So when we talk about religion, which is very important for us, as you know, we have a history of 5,000 years of the religion. Uh, this issue, this totally goes basically against the sentiments of the people.
Yes.
So what we believe is that life and death, it's in the hands of the God, and if we try to play with nature, or if we try to go against the nature, then you can imagine the kind of issues that it's going to create. So this would create a lot of social issues,
Yes.
economic issues, I would say the legal anguish, and so many other issues. And this was time and again pointed during that meeting that this is against the religious sentiments and teachings of the people of our subcontinent. If you
Sure.
talk about Bhagavad Gita, Hinduism, if you talk about Sikhism, if you talk
Even
about
even
Buddhism, if you
Buddhism,
talk about
probably. Yes.
Islam,
Yes.
Quran. So our books, our religious values do not allow us to play with the life. And also, Ajayji, we have also seen miracles as well. अभी जैसे बताया पिताजी ने, तो वो that was it's very sad, of course, when such things happen with the parents or any elderly, when a person is able to take the decisions. What when the person is not able to take the decisions?
Right.
That creates more of trouble, more of problems. And then there's opportunist, within the families and outside the families. So there's more chances that this law would get more abused than used.
Right. So Mitaji, this is a very interesting perspective. It's good to get like almost diametrically opposed, but still agreeing on some aspects.
Sure.
But really, when it's so personal, would it have been easier for you if this was available? Yes, I guess. But what happens in a situation where maybe they'd misdiagnose it, or you don't know at the time, but there is a drug available perhaps that can help the patient with their particular situation? Maybe not in your mother's case. I'm just trying to see how this would come about with the population at large, and also culturally, how do you deal with that? I know it's personal, so you were like, "Sare tradition वगैरह छोड़ो, I don't want to see my mother suffering." I get that.
It was a point of no return, Ajay ji, for her. Kyunki we seen all her tests, all her MRIs, we were with her, and ye nahi tha ki we had consulted just one doctor. We had consulted two doctors overseas, and
Yes.
we had taken second opinions from AIMS also. So it
Right.
was a point of no return for her. And I think this right should be available if you're absolutely sure that it is a point of no return, just like it was for our mother.
Right.
नहीं कि थोड़ी सी प्रॉब्लम है, और ये नहीं है कि जरा सी प्रॉब्लम है and the family gets that right to decide. नहीं, it has to be, जैसे सनी जी ने कहा कि it is a very sensitive issue and
Very.
should not be abused, but it should only be available when it is in a case like us, when it's a point of no return.
Yeah, but I guess that's the other issue, is who makes that choice and who makes that call at the end of that particular case or term of that particular patient. And that is something that the legislation is allowing for, but I don't think it's adequate, the way that legislation is being put forward right now. And that's I think one of the more challenging aspects of this legislation. This could very well get voted through and it will become law. The marijuana one is not coming through yet. This one is, it could, without being unkind to Mr. David Seymour, it could well be rammed through, as it were. But there is always going to be the issue of who makes the choice, how do they decide, and what happens if they make a bad choice or a bad decision. So that's a very interesting thing. In terms of the misuse, I think, Sunny ji, I'll come back to you because you're involved with these community groups. I have come across personally with cases where, the elders are at home and their pension is going directly to the son or the daughter-in-law or the son-in-law and the daughter, and they are stuck. I actually faced a situation where I met an older gentleman outside Sylvia Park, and he said, "Putta mainu $10 de de, maine bus fadni hai." मैनू मेरे पुत्र ने पैसे नहीं देते. I want to go back home. He was going to Papatoi from Silver Park Shopping Center. He'd come to spend some time. He was lonely, and his kids were not looking after him. And what would they be capable of doing in this end of life scenario? I think that is a possibility in our community as well.
That's very correct. Even I have come across a number of cases that the elders how they are being badly treated. You can talk about financially, there's the physical abuse, there's so many things happening, right?
Yeah.
And also, as you rightly said before, touching this one, is that who is going to take the call and then who is influencing the call,
Yes.
right? That's another aspect, right? I mean, nowadays for the elders' property and all those things,
Yes.
What else is not
that's
happening,
sad stuff,
right?
That is sad stuff, I know.
That's sad stuff. And with this kind of law, do you think this cannot be influenced? It can be influenced. I mean, even if you're looking at nowadays, I think there's one case happening, in India. That's one of the actors, suicide case.
Yes,
so,
yes.
So you know what I mean. Things could be influenced at every level.
So at the risk of interrupting you, I know Sumita ji probably has to take care of a patient, possibly. Sumita ji, I'll give you the last word on this before you have to leave. I know you're very passionate about this. The floor is yours.
I mean, as I said, I am still, in favor of it, provided it is judicially used and not abused.
Sure.
And there should be a governing body monitoring it, with the medical reports, या कहीं किसी की will तो नहीं manipulate की गई है या कोई pressure तो नहीं है. I mean, there should be an independent body governing it, but I still am in favor because what my mother went through, मैं कभी भी अपने लिए ऐसा नहीं चाहूंगी. Never ever.
And किसी और के लिए भी नहीं.
किसी और के लिए भी नहीं. But मुझे अपने लिए रहने का हक है.
I actually I didn't realize before we started our interview today that it was such a personal scenario for you, and I'm really touched by it, and I can see. In fact, we are really lucky having both of you with slightly divergent views, because we're really getting a sense of what एक पलड़े पे क्या हो सकता है और दूसरे पे क्या हो सकता है, और इसमें तो काफी सारे पलड़े हैं, दो ही नहीं है सिर्फ.
और अभी तो मैंने सीरियसली अपनी मदर की कंडीशन का सिर्फ 5% आप लोगों को डिस्क्राइब किया है. If I go to 100%, I'm sure a lot of people will agree.
Yeah, it'll be. I think it'll be very hard to deal with. It's something that's not easy.
Absolutely.
So sorry, that's a sad note to leave you on, but it's also a very enlightening note to leave you on. Thank you very much for coming and sharing something so personal. I don't know if I would have been able to do it, frankly.
Thank you so much for understanding that.
It's a brave person to be able to do that. Thank you very much for joining us and for putting a very interesting perspective on this whole discussion. Have a great day. What's left of it.
Thank you. See you.
Thank you.
See you. So we'll kind of continue with the very interesting discussion. I am quite enjoying this, and we're going to try and get a couple of other voices into the mix. Sunny, if you'd like to just give us time while we connect with the other parties concerned, but they're coming. I'll just give you a little bit of background on for our viewers. We'll kind of move on to the cannabis, and we have a little bit of discussion to do on this as well. It's an ongoing kind of I see it as a coffee table discussion rather than an interview. So this particular scenario is that the Parliament has actually approved the legislation pertaining to assisted dying is already ready to go. It's been passed through Parliament. It's been approved by a majority of the MPs. The only question is whether the country wants to sign off on it. And if they do, it could well be put in place. However, the cannabis referendum, on the other hand, is non-binding. Even if 99% of the population vote in favor, the governing party or parties could theoretically decide not to implement it. मतलब आप जाके वोट दे आओ, रेफरेंडम में हेलो भी कर दो और हाँ भी कर दो, लेकिन वो शायद आपकी बात ना माने, ना भी कर दो वो शायद आपकी बात ना माने. So it would be politically questionable, though. It would probably put that particular party, whoever decides to go against the will of the public, into a very questionable scenario. Also, the cannabis legislation hasn't really been finalized yet. It's still a bill, and in order to become an act, it still needs to pass through the parliamentary process. 3 readings in the House, where issues can be raised and debated, and a select committee process where the public can make submissions and raise their concerns. Now, it's likely that there are still some blind spots in many people's understanding of the legislation. So, carrying on with the discussion, I think we are now joined by Nikhil Naidu as well. Welcome to the coffee table talk, Nikhil. It's no longer an interview. We decided it was much more personal and fun than that.
Hey. Hello, Ajay, and namaste, Sunny. How are you?
Oh, hello, Nick. How are you?
Good.
It's a small world we live in. We know each other.
Yes.
It's good to have you guys on this platform. So we had a very, just for your benefit, Nikhil, you're joining us a bit later in the process. We had a very interesting discussion on the end of life choice, where Sunny had a very interesting perspective from the community and the cultural perspective, where this kind of thing is just not seen as right with all the traditions and all of our religious beliefs, and it doesn't quite fit in with the Kiwi way of thinking. But we're kind of moving on from that and trying to move on to the debate about marijuana, otherwise known as weed, ganja. I don't know all the other names. Dope, yes. And if you're from some other younger sort of generation, when you think somebody is cool, you also call them dope. And in my time, dope used to be somebody who was a little bit slow on the uptake. Like dopey and sneezy and stuff. But so we'll just bring you in, Nikhil, seeing as you've just joined us. Your perspective on this idea of legalizing cannabis and at least making it medically available and controlling it to a degree where it's no longer criminal for people to be consuming it.
Well, I'm a firm believer in democracy and freedoms and people being able to choose their own, rights and their own lives.
Yes.
So I'm always for anything that gives you choice.
So choosing your own drug of choice is also should be enshrined in that right as a democratic citizen. Is that what you're saying?
Of course. I mean, getting personal here, I don't smoke, I don't drink
Sure.
alcohol, I don't take any drugs. That's a personal choice of mine.
Right.
There's no religious reason. It's just a personal choice.
Right. Sunny, we'll take the question back to you now. Where are you at with this one?
Yes. Look, I'll first of all I'll consider it as a moral responsibility of our generation. As I said previously, a time comes that you need to stand up for your conscience and the moral values. And secondly, being the community representatives or the member of the community or the leaders, whatever you can say,
Right.
we have a role to play. We have a role to play for the current generation and the diaspora here, and also we have a role to play for that's going to impact our next generations. Tomorrow there shouldn't be a case that our next generation, they curse us that when we had the time, we did not stand up and we passed on something which they have, they're paying that price. So this issue of cannabis legalization, look, we all know that this is a drug. And also, I just wanted to correct the sentence when you open that one. So here we are not talking about the medicinal use of marijuana. So it's already legal. It's already available for medicinal uses.
Yes.
But now this question, when this referendum has come through, this is more about recreational use. So if that happens, that would mean that this would become widely available in an n number of shops, even those small dairies or whatsoever.
So what they're proposing right now, from what I understand, is that you have to be 20 or over to be able to access it. It will be at controlled outlets, and and you're very rightly pointing this out. Medically, it's available, but because of the laws around it, to get a single dose of medical marijuana at this point in time in New Zealand can cost you $900 or above. So it's very much only available to those who are rich. It's not available to those who might be unwell and poor. So maybe there needs to be some balancing there.
Yeah, that's correct. Look, those things can be tweaked in regard to the medical stuff. But the lobby behind this to make it legalized is the one who wanted this to be used for the recreational use.
So I have a question for you, Sunny. That's a very interesting perspective. Do you think the idea that it is criminal and prohibited at this point is working for us as a community at this stage? Or is there such a criminalization around it, the gangs and it being available sort of on the street corner or behind closed doors? Do you think prohibition has worked in New Zealand's favor? Because there's a school of thought out there that so many Kiwis are already doing this anyway. Why should they be seen as criminals if everybody is doing it or a large section of society is doing it? And I'll maybe pass that on to you and then on to Nikhil as well.
Sure. If you think there's a certain percentage of Kiwis are already using it through black market or whatsoever, and why we are standing up is that 100% of the Kiwis or more should not have that access. I'm talking about the youth. I'm talking about the students. I'm talking about our workers. Think about the consequences. What's going to happen? Is cannabis, as you know, it's a drug. It has huge side effects or the ill effects than any benefits of it. So it's harmful for a number of health aspects. As you know, this is detrimental to your brain development. And it creates a lot of mental issues. I mean, we already have a lot of mental issues here in New Zealand. And this would also create a lot of law and order issues, if I can say, and then domestic violence would be increased. And we also see there would be going to be increase in the criminal activities, the crime. And then think about the drivers, unsafe drivers, if they have taken this cannabis or dope or whatsoever, how safe the roads are going to be.
So I don't know the answer to that, but I think Nikhil is smiling. He might have an answer of some sort. Go ahead, Nikhil.
Look, Sunny, I have to, unfortunately, you're a good friend and a lot of respect for you, but I have to disagree with you on most of what you've said. If you want to look at harm, and we can start with harm, we'll come back to morality. We are the most unmoral people, human beings, so we shouldn't talk about morality. I mean, where do we draw the line and what is immoral and what isn't? But with harm, I mean, there's your chances of getting sick or dying from smoking weed or marijuana is 100 times less than alcohol. If we want to do morality and we want to talk about harm and banning things, we should ban alcohol as well. Alcohol is the biggest contributor of domestic violence, not marijuana. Alcohol is the biggest contributor of car accidents, of violence in our community, of death of women in our society. 50% of most of the women killed in domestic violence are not killed by dope smokers. They're killed by people who are drunk. And alcohol causes all the ills and harms in our society. I don't know anyone who's got sick smoking marijuana. I know a lot of people who've got alcohol poisoning drinking alcohol. So yeah, it's, I think we've got to put it into perspective. You can't have one or the other. The other thing is, in terms of Maori and Pacifica, the majority of Maori and Pacifica smoke marijuana. I'm talking about the youth and younger people. And for possession of a little bit of marijuana, which is for personal consumption, they end up going to jail and having a conviction. And it's just a vicious cycle where just because of that one conviction, you can't get a job, you can't travel, you can't progress in life. And all because, you, as a kid, you've been smoking it or it's been smoked in your house. And because you're smoking marijuana and you get caught with it while you're driving or outside, you get a conviction. So hopefully by legalizing it, we can avoid a lot of the
But
misconceptions.
that's a very interesting perspective, Nick. There would be also probably a point of view where we don't really know. With alcohol, we know what has happened since it's been openly available, but we don't really know what marijuana will do if it's openly available, or at least in the controlled way that they are suggesting in this particular referendum.
But we do, Ajay. Can I say we do? I think prohibition, alcohol was prohibited many decades ago.
Mm-hmm.
And if you, I was not around then, but if you read up on that, there was, a lot of illegal alcohol sales going on.
Smuggling of alcohol. I know it happened in many
a lot
parts
of
of the world.
violence, a lot of gangs, a lot of crime. And now, who remembers that now? And I also remember if you were here earlier on in the 70s and 60s in Aotearoa in New Zealand, pubs would stop serving alcohol, and I think at 6 o'clock.
Yes.
And what would people do? You'd go at 5 o'clock after work, and you would drink as much as you can before 6, so that you make up for it. Then you go home. And
that's where binge drinking. That's where the binge drinking culture started from. You reckon?
Yes. Sorry. So that's my 50 cents worth.
So look. I'm really enjoying this. It's a very interesting, diametrically opposed, somewhat, but at the same time, a perspective that there could be room for both thoughts, if you like. So
let me come back to
okay.
Next point.
A quick one, and then I've got a very interesting perspective I want to get your thoughts on.
Cool. I mean, totally understandable. Alcohol, of course, how it is creating those harms and all. And as Ajay said, alcohol, we know, that how the consequences are, but this cannabis, we still do not know. So when we already have so many problems, knowing that this is happening from one product, why we wanted to support another product to create more problems in the society?
Because I'll tell you why. Because a majority of the population already smoke dope, and there's no problems. That's why.
Unfortunately, I wouldn't agree. It's not the majority. There's a very few hand people who do. But when I look
in the wrong circles, man.
Our countries, our youth, our students, and all, they're still not there. And
actually, there's a very interesting thing coming out of this, Sunnyji. Actually, just to underline your point, I think there is a kind of a I don't know what to call it, the best terminology for it. There's a kind of a head in the sand approach to it in our community in particular, where we don't want to be associated with being seen to be doing it. But there are probably, I don't know the number, so it's very hard for me to say, but there's probably quite a vast number of people even within our community, maybe in the youth, maybe those who are older and did all this in the 60s and 70s while they were growing up in the free love generation and all that, or the hippies were coming to Nepal, right? Or if you were a bhakt and at Holi you would get bhang, So it's been part of our culture for a very long time, and it hasn't really been. It's only in the modern world in the last 100 odd years that they've come up with all this legislation and stopping it. So there is a possibility that we don't want to be seen to be doing it. And publicly we will say no, but maybe on the quiet we go out and have a spliff or a puff or more.
Yeah, but also it's not a right thing to do, knowingly that this is going to affect your health, this is going to create problems, and that's where we need to come forward. We need to educate our youngsters or next generations, and we need to stand up. There have been certain laws which were passed before, and probably at that time our community or our MPs did not stand up for those ones. And now, I mean, I can quote some certain examples, but I think this is probably another topic that we can have.
What to figure out what the MPs are saying and what they're doing wrong? That's a all year program.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, on a lighter note, Nick, why,
Yes.
alcohol, they say when this is more of a social drinking, or, people, alcohol brings people together. I mean, don't quote me otherwise. I mean, it brings people together, but, marijuana or bhang and all, it makes you separate, it puts you into your separate world, so
separate zone.
you're not together. Basically, it breaks you away.
Different kind of high.
Yeah. So anyway, but we need to stand up for the pros and cons, and we need to take responsibility of being elders, and I think create awareness for our next generations and our community.
So there are two other aspects to this proposition. I mean, it's only a proposition at the moment because they haven't really done all the readings and it hasn't gone through. One is, and this seems to be backed by a little bit of quite a bit of research in the medical circles, is that there is a level of induced psychosis or mental health issues where people who have mental health issues and they are partaking of marijuana, that it can exacerbate their symptoms. It can actually pull them aside further. Having said that, there are others who are in pain from other medical conditions, maybe not mental health, maybe cancer and stuff, who find a lot of solace and a salve in it. It helps them deal with their pain and it helps them deal with the symptoms of chemo and stuff like that. So I think wherever we end up going with this, there is going to be an issue of it's going to work for some people, it's not going to work for some people. My main question, maybe the one to maybe round off on with both of you, is if it comes to pass that it becomes readily available, and I'm not going to ask either of you which way you're going to vote, whether you're going to ever partake of it, or whether you were like Bill Clinton and never you tasted it but you never inhaled, none of that. But my question to you would be, if it becomes part of the landscape in New Zealand and we as Indians are somehow in it, were you going to be supportive of it? Are you going to be happy about that change, or you're not? I kind of know the answer, but we'll start with Saniji and then we'll go to Nikhil.
I think I would still keep the fight on, even if it is passed. I mean, if something is wrong, something is definitely wrong. And secondly, as I mentioned in the previous set, that this is against our religious values, this is against our family values, this is against our cultural values. When we look at any of the religious, say Hinduism, as I said, or Islam, or Sikhism, or Buddhism, none of our those books or our gurus or our gods, no one basically allows us to go for their drugs.
Right.
And also we have to safeguard our next generations, and we
Right.
need to stand up for this one. This is totally against the values and also the sentiments.
Nikhil, you'll take us out on this one, I guess.
Well, I think, the answer I said earlier was that I believe in choice and the freedom of choice and democracy. And, the weekend part of the process will be people will choose. But, in terms of harm and and morality and religion, I mean, most of the organized religions preach against drug use and not to partake in drugs.
Yes.
Because it gives you a false high. But the biggest drug, and we're all hypocritical in this in our society, is alcohol. Alcohol is the biggest drug and the biggest cause of all our problems. The most deaths, the most violence, the most child abuse, all caused by alcohol. So if we are going to allow alcohol to continue in its current form, then there's no reason why we shouldn't allow any other drug. Because then any other drug, because if that's the case, then we should give people equal choice, and we should pay for
that might end up going further down that slippery slope of heroin and pee and meth and all that kind of stuff.
Well, that's a choice people have to make, and like you said earlier, it's about affordability, and it does lead to crime. I mean, people steal. I mean, let me tell you about alcohol shops. How many alcohol shops get robbed on a daily basis?
Yes.
And if you're saying to me that people can't afford marijuana, they can't afford alcohol as well, which is why they rob them, which is why they steal alcohol. So yeah, I think it's a matter of choice. Don't get distracted by my personal views. It's I think people have to exercise the choice. Sunny Pai rightly says, if you have a moral ground or argument on that, you stand by a morality about your religious beliefs. This is not an alcohol choice. This is a choice about cannabis. And people have to choose according to how they view it. The beauty about living in New Zealand and Aotearoa is we have that choice. Very few countries would give you this choice.
Actually, that's a very interesting takeout. We should be talking to the people in the Netherlands, where it's been legal for so many years, and trying to figure out what went wrong or what went right with that environment in terms of, they've had sort of clashing of ideas. But if that doesn't happen, there is not enough discussion, there's not a robust discussion in society. So thank you very much, Sunny Kaushalji, for coming on the show, and for Nikhil Naidu.
Can I just, the last one, a quick one.
The last word, you want the last word?
Last word. Basically, what we need to do is we need to put the fence up in the cliff, right? So we shouldn't be waiting with the ambulance down the cliff. So
right.
I'll leave it to you with that one.
All right. Did you also want a last word, Nikhil?
Well, you might not like my last word, but if you bring up the Netherlands and on morality and on legality, prostitution is also legal there.
Oh, it's kind of legal here also, isn't it?
No. That is what I wanted to talk, how that bill was passed. And because at that time, again, our community, we had a bit of a, here and there stand, but one of our MPs voted wrongly. And otherwise, that bill would never have passed.
So we have to find that MP. Sunnyji, I'll give you a call. We'll find that MP, and we're going to go and take him out for a drink and take his class.
Yeah,
take him out for a smoke. Take him out for a smoke or a drink.
We'll have to take him out for a drink. It's not legal to have a smoke with him right now.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think that discussion about other things from the Netherlands, that's a topic for another show. And it'll be lovely to have either of you and others from the community involved in these discussions. A couple of things I'd like to just share with our viewers. As this series of discussions and topics are rolled out, we will also be giving an opportunity to our viewers, readers, listeners to come and join us via phone or via Zoom. We're just working on the technology side of it. And at the same time, last but not least, if you haven't been out to vote, please go and vote. We have a democracy that's working, at least a lot better than many other parts of the world. Let's make it more robust. Go out and make sure you vote. So thank you very much again, Nikhil, and thank you very much again, Sunnyji.
Thank you so much. We'll see you again.
Namaskaram. So folks, there is the verdict. There was no verdict. I don't know whether or not we are able to decide one way or the other what is going to be the best approach, whether it comes to the end of life choice bill or the legalization of the Cannabis Act in terms of saying we can make it available medically and for personal use also on a controlled basis where people can go to a certain licensed shop and get it. So I think this is probably very representative of the way our society is currently in New Zealand. We are all going through this कश्मकश. सोच रहे हैं हम लोग कि ये सही है या नहीं है, और अगर कल को आ जाती है तो हमारे पर इसका क्या इफेक्ट होगा. आप भी सोचिए, अपने दिल के और अपने ज़मीर के अंदर झांकिए, and go out as you vote for your politicians. Please put a vote for the referendum as well, and we look forward to seeing you again one more time. I think we're going to be very busy over this period. There's going to be lots of viewing coming your way, as it's going to be voting time in just 2 days, and we are making lots of coverage of it. Do stay with us, keep an eye on what we are doing, and keep joining us as and when you can. Namaskar. We'll see you another time. This has been a special presentation of the Weekender, Indian Weekender on Thursday. Thank you.